In the forgotten mists of Nagano, there once stood a temple no one dares to name aloud. They said its bell could sing without being struck. That when the wind slept, when even ghosts held their breath, the bell still tolled, carrying the voice of a woman long dead. Some called it a curse. Others called it love that refused to die. But in every echo of that sound lies a memory. Of fire, of sin, and of a promise whispered in blood. Greater than, if I must become the bell to be remembered, then let my heart ring forever. This is the legend of the woman in the bell, where death is silence, and remembrance is the sound that never ends. Chapter 1: The Temple on the Misty Hill. Night descended upon the hills like a sheet of pale silk. Mist curled between the trees, thick and unbroken, wrapping the narrow mountain path that led toward the lonely summit known as Omaiji no Yama, the hill where rain never ceases. At the top of that hill, hidden within the forest of ancient cedars, stood an abandoned temple the villagers called Shōren-ji. No one remembered the name of its last abbot, nor when the final prayer was spoken there. Only the sound of a bell, heard though no one struck it, lingered across generations. Whispered as a curse. In the 12th autumn of the Genroku era, a young scholar named Kenjiro arrived from Kyoto. He was a quiet man, devoted to collecting forgotten legends and recording the strange tales of the countryside. Wherever he went, he carried a weathered notebook bound in black leather, his journal of the unseen. When he heard rumors of a temple whose bell tolled by itself, even when the mountain winds slept, his curiosity overcame his fear. The villagers warned him that the sound was no ordinary bell, but the sigh of a spirit trapped within. That evening, as the sun sank red behind the ridges, Kenjiro reached a small settlement at the mountain's foot. He entered an old tea house beside the road, where an aged woman with clouded eyes poured him bitter tea. Greater than, if you go up the hill, she whispered, go while daylight still breathes. When night comes, the bell will ring. And when it rings, she listens. Kenjiro smiled politely, believing it only superstition. But the woman's voice hardened, trembling with memory. Greater than, that temple is cursed. Traveler, the bell was forged with blood. A cold wind passed through the doorway. The paper lantern swayed, and from afar, a single crow cried over the darkening forest. By the time Kenjiro reached the slope, the mist had thickened to a pale ocean. He could no longer tell where the earth ended and the clouds began. The stone steps were slick with moss, and the crooked gravestones along the path seemed to bow as he passed, as though mourning some forgotten sin. Each step he took echoed faintly, gravel shifting beneath his sandals, and somewhere behind him, he thought he heard the faint rhythm of another set of footsteps. When he turned, only mist. At last, through the fog, the shape of Shōren-ji emerged, its roof sagging, its wooden gates half-rotten, the twin guardian statues at its entrance eroded into monstrous grimaces. The air smelled of rust and old incense, the scent of things once sacred, now left to die. In the courtyard hung the bell. It was enormous, green with age, streaked with long, dark stains that might have been rust, or might have been something else. Across its surface was an inscription, barely legible beneath the moss. Greater than, the bell of pure heart, the soul sacrificed shall rest in peace. Kenjiro reached out and touched the metal. It was cold, colder than stone, colder than death. At that instant, a breath of wind exhaled from within the hollow bell, carrying with it a voice faint as dream. Greater than, you've come again? He froze. The voice was not echo, nor wind, it was human, soft and weary, as though speaking from another world. He turned, no one there. Only mist. Then, from the bell, came a single low sound. Boong. The faint toll drifted through the fog, melting into silence. Kenjiro felt his heartbeat slow, as if the bell were listening to it from within. Later, inside the main hall, he lit a small oil lamp, opened his notebook, and wrote his first line. Greater than, day 1 at Shōren-ji. The bell rang once. No one struck it. Outside, through the paper doors, the mist moved like ghosts. Then came the second toll, soft, distant, sorrowful. A sound less like metal, and more like a woman crying a name in her sleep. Chapter 2: The Villager's Warning. The next morning, the mist still clung to the valley. Pale sunlight slipped weakly through the bamboo grove, yet the air remained heavy, as if the earth itself refused to wake. Kenjiro descended to the village at the mountain's foot. Beside the old stone well, a few women were washing clothes. When they saw him, they bowed politely, but their eyes looked away, wary, as if afraid his shadow might bring bad luck. He smiled gently. "Greater than, excuse me," he said, "that temple on the hill, did something once happen there?" A middle-aged woman paused, wringing the water from her cloth. "Greater than, something?" she murmured. "Only ghosts remain up there. The temple's been abandoned more than 100 years. You'd best stay away." A younger woman, nervous and pale, whispered. "Greater than, they say when the bell rings 3 times on a moonless night. Whoever hears it dies before dawn. And when that person dies, the bell tolls once more to welcome the new soul." At those words, the others quickly gathered their laundry and hurried off, leaving only one old woman behind. Her back was bent, her eyes milky, but she stepped closer to Kenjiro and spoke so softly the wind could barely carry her words. "Greater than, do not write of that place. Scholar, some things are not meant to be remembered." Kenjiro's voice trembled slightly. "Greater than, I've heard the bell was forged with blood. Is that true?" The crone was silent for a long time. Then she gave a thin, bitter smile, the kind that belongs to those who have lived too long with fear. "Greater than, there was once a woman. Her name was Okane. They said she defiled the temple, tempted the abbot, brought ruin to holiness. When the bell would not ring, the villagers said, only the blood of the guilty can make the bronze sing. And so," her voice faltered. A gust of wind scattered her gray hair, and from deep within the forest came a sound, low, metallic, mournful, neither bird nor man. "Boong." The woman shuddered and made a small sign with her hand. "Greater than, it rings again, even in daylight." Kenjiro turned toward the hill. Through the rising mist, he thought he saw movement, perhaps a shape watching him from among the cedars. That night he stayed at the hut of an old fisherman. Before they slept, the man warned him. "Greater than, if the bell rings tonight, do not answer. No matter what voice calls your name, keep silent." Kenjiro smiled, thinking it mere superstition. But when the candles burned low and the insects outside fell quiet, he heard it. A single toll, far away, soft as breath. Then a voice whispered, so close it brushed his ear. "Greater than, Ken-jiro?" He opened his eyes, no one in the room. Only the paper window trembling in the wind, and the tiny desk bell beside his notebook quivering on its own. Though the air was still, he took up his pen and wrote by the dim light. "Greater than, the bell has rung twice. Someone called my name in the dark." Outside, the rain began to fall. And far above, upon the hill shrouded in fog, the bell tolled a 3rd time. All the villagers woke, yet none dared to speak. Chapter 3: The Tale of the Old Man in the Teahouse. The next afternoon, Kenjiro returned to the teahouse where he had rested before. It sat by the old path, beside a half-broken cedar tree. Inside, smoke from a charcoal brazier drifted slowly through the air, thick with the scent of bitter tea and damp straw, the fragrance of places where time had stopped. Only one other guest was there, a blind old man, seated in the corner, his thin hands folded around a cold teacup. The innkeeper leaned close to Kenjiro and whispered, "Greater than, that man once tended the temple of Shōren-ji, before the curse." Kenjiro bowed and took a seat across from him. The old man was frail, his hair ashen, his eyes clouded white, but there was something piercing in his gaze, as if he could see what others could not. When Kenjiro mentioned the bell, the old man gave a rasping laugh, a sound like rusted metal. "Greater than, so it still rains. Does it? Then she has not forgiven us." Kenjiro leaned forward. "Greater than, who do you mean, she?" The old man poured tea with trembling hands, the cup overflowed. "Greater than, her name was Okane. She served the temple for more than 10 years, gentle, quiet, devoted. She swept the courtyards, tended the lamps, brought water from the stream each dawn. Everyone loved her, especially the abbot, Dogen. He paused, voice sinking lower. Greater than, Dogen was a righteous man, until he loved her. Outside, the wind moved through the reeds, carrying a faint rattle of the wind bell. The old man's words continued, slower now, as if each one cost him breath. Greater than, when affection enters the heart of a priest, it becomes poison. They hid their love, but eyes in a village are sharp. Then came the time to forge the temple bell. The bell cracked, again and again. The villagers said the temple was defiled. They blamed her. Kenjiro felt the air grow heavier. The old man's blind eyes glistened as he went on. Greater than, one night, they came for her, a mob with torches. They bound her hands and dragged her to the courtyard. Dogen knelt, begged for her life, but they threw him aside. The bell founder said, "Only a pure heart will make the bronze flow. If she is truly innocent, her soul will remain to make it sing forever." And then, the old man's voice broke. He bowed his head, tears leaked from his sightless eyes, clear and trembling like dew. Greater than, they cast her into the molten bronze. Kenjiro could not speak. The only sound was the quiet roll of the teacup across the table. Outside, wind pressed against the shoji door, and from somewhere in the distance came that same deep, sorrowful sound. "Boon." The old man flinched, clutching his head, whispering frantic prayers under his breath. Greater than, listen carefully. Scholar. If you truly listen to the bell, you can hear her weeping within it. Every time someone touches the bronze, she remembers the pain of the fire. Kenjiro whispered. Greater than, and Dogen, what became of him? The old man's laugh was hollow, broken. Greater than, he sealed himself inside the temple for 3 days. When they broke the door, he was gone. Only the great Buddha statue remained, and blood had streamed from its eyes. Silence filled the room. Outside, the sky dimmed, crows circled above the roof, their wings beating like fragments of thunder. Kenjiro bowed deeply. Greater than, if I were to go there tonight, he asked, what should I do? The blind man tilted his head toward the sound of the bell, his voice a whisper of dread. Greater than, do not go when it rings 3 times. For when that happens, she no longer weeps. She searches for a new heart. Kenjiro left the teahouse as dusk gathered. Mist rose again on the hill, curling around the cedars like white smoke. From far above, the bell called out a single note. Long, low, trembling. Like the cry of someone burning, yet unable to die. Chapter 4. The first night on the mountain. That night, Kenjiro decided to remain at the abandoned temple. He wished to witness for himself whether the stories were mere superstition, or something far older. He lit a small oil lamp inside the ruined main hall. The tatami mats were long decayed, the statues half crumbled. Wind whispered through the cracks in the roof, carrying the smell of damp wood and rusted metal. Outside, the sound of cicadas had ceased, leaving a silence so deep that his heartbeat echoed like footsteps in an empty corridor. He opened his notebook, the same one that held the legends he'd gathered across the provinces, and wrote, Greater than, Night 1, Shōren-ji. The temple sleeps, but I feel eyes upon me. The bell is silent, yet the air hums, as though remembering its sound. When the lamp flickered, he thought he saw movement beyond the shoji door. A faint white shadow, passing from right to left. He stood, stepped outside into the courtyard. Mist hung thick as smoke. The great bell stood before him, half hidden by moonlight. It looked less like metal and more like a living creature, breathing, glistening, pulsing softly beneath the skin of moss. He approached. The air around the bell was unnaturally cold, and the earth beneath his feet was damp, not with rain, but with something dark that smelled faintly of iron. He knelt, touched the soil. His fingers came away red. Then, a sound. A single droplet falling somewhere deep inside the bell, echoing like a heartbeat. Kenjiro held his breath. And faintly, from within that hollow metal shell, he heard a voice. Greater than, so you've come again. He froze. The voice was not an echo. It was within the bell. Soft, breathless, like someone whispering from behind a wall of water. Greater than, you shouldn't have remembered me. Kenjiro's lips trembled. Greater than, who are you? Silence. Then a sigh that seemed to pass through the ground beneath him. Greater than, they gave me a new name, the woman in the bell. But I was once human. He stumbled back. The mist stirred, and for an instant he thought he saw her, a pale woman's figure. Drenched in moonlight, hair long and black as ink. Her face was calm, almost kind, but her eyes were hollow, like the empty space inside the bell. Kenjiro tried to speak, but the air thickened in his throat. The woman turned slowly toward him. Greater than, the priest loved me once, she whispered, then he cast me into fire. The wind surged, the lamp went out. For a moment, darkness swallowed everything. Then, a flash of white. He saw her hand pressing against the surface of the bell from the inside. The metal bent beneath her touch. And through it, a line of blood trickled down, glimmering in the moonlight. Kenjiro fled into the main hall, heart pounding. He collapsed before the altar, muttering fragments of prayers he could barely remember. But when he dared to glance up, he saw that the great Buddha statue at the far end of the hall had changed. Its eyes, once closed, were now open. And from the corner of one stone eye, a thin red tear slid down its cheek. Outside, the bell tolled once, deep and slow, a sound not struck by any hand, but by the weight of a memory that refused to die. Chapter 5: The Shadow Beneath the Bell. The following day, the mountain was silent. The mist did not lift, even when the sun rose high. It was as if Shōren-ji lay beneath a veil the heavens had forgotten to remove. Kenjiro awoke to the faint toll of the bell. He ran outside, but the courtyard was empty. The bell still. Only the echo remained, trembling faintly in the air, like the aftertaste of a dream. He approached the bell once more. The marks he had seen the previous night were gone, no blood, no handprint, nothing. Yet when he placed his ear against the cold metal, he heard a faint rustling from within, as though someone were turning the pages of a book in the dark. He called out softly, "Greater than, Okane, is that your name?" The sound stopped. A pause. Then came a whisper, light and cold. "Greater than, names are only for the living." Kenjiro stepped back. The wind stirred the grass, carrying with it a scent, faintly sweet, faintly rotten, like flowers left upon a grave too long. In the distance, he saw movement by the ruined well behind the temple, a white shape vanishing between the cedars. He followed. The well was ancient, its stones slick with moss, the rope long rotted away. He peered into the darkness, but saw no water, only blackness without end. From below, a drop fell, plink, echoing endlessly, as if falling through time itself. When he leaned closer, he saw his own reflection shimmering faintly upon the surface far below. But behind his reflection, a second face appeared. A woman's. He gasped, stumbled back. The voice came again, now not from the well, but all around him, whispering through the trees. "Greater than, you looked upon me once. Long ago. Do you remember?" Kenjiro's heart raced. "Greater than, I've never seen you before. Greater than, not in this life." The air grew colder. Mist poured from the well like breath. And in that breath, shapes began to form, slender hands reaching upward, hair floating as if underwater. Kenjiro fell to his knees. "Greater than, what do you want from me?" "Greater than, to be remembered. For only memory can keep the dead from vanishing." The hands retreated, the mist sank back into the well. Silence returned, except for the faint dripping sound. And beneath it, the echo of a woman's sob, distant but unending. Kenjiro staggered back toward the main hall. When he entered, he saw upon the altar a small, half-burned candle, still lit, though he had not touched it. Next to it lay an old wooden plaque, carved with words half erased by age. "Greater than, here rests she whose heart was cast in bronze." He sat down, trembling, and wrote in his notebook, "Greater than, day 2, the bell no longer feels like metal. It feels alive. The well behind the temple hides her shadow. She weeps beneath the water, waiting to be seen. Outside, the fog thickened once more. And far above the roof, the bell tolled, low, hollow, but unmistakably human, as if someone were sighing from within its depths. Chapter 6: The Woman in the Well. The third night fell upon Shōren-ji. The moon did not rise. The forest was drowned in fog so dense that even the stone lanterns vanished within it. Kenjiro sat alone beneath the temple eaves, notebook in his lap, the oil lamp trembling beside him. He had read through every line of the old Abbot Dogen's journal, each word heavier than the last. He no longer felt like a scholar documenting a legend. He felt like a man slowly walking into it. Behind the main hall lay a narrow path overgrown with grass. The innkeeper's warning echoed in his memory. There is an old well behind the temple, no one hears the bottom. The villagers called it the bottomless well. Carrying his lamp, Kenjiro followed the path. The air grew colder, the smell of wet moss filling his lungs. There, in the hollow of the garden, he found it. A stone well wrapped in roots and vines, its rim bound with a frayed rope like an ancient scar. He lifted the lamp and leaned over the edge. Darkness stared back. Far below, something rippled, faint, soundless, then still. A drop fell. Then another. The echoes came back distorted, as though the water below had its own voice. Kenjiro's breath misted. And suddenly, from that depth, a reflection appeared, not his own. A pale face, eyes open, lips faintly parted, black hair drifting as if underwater. He gasped and stepped back, the lamp nearly slipping from his grasp. When he looked again, the water only mirrored the night sky. He exhaled. But before he could turn away, a voice rose from below, a whisper so fragile it might have been the sound of wind through reeds. Greater than, you've read his words. Kenjiro froze. The voice came from the well, soft, female, tinged with grief. Greater than, my heart lies in the bell. But my soul lies in the water. He swallowed hard. Greater than, Okane, is that you? The darkness did not answer. Then, slowly, a white hand broke the surface, delicate, slender, but the fingers were scorched black. It reached up, grazing the air, and where it touched, ripples shattered his reflection. Greater than, the man who sinned has turned to ash. The voice said. But sin remains as long as someone remembers. A gust of wind rose, snuffing out the lamp. From within the fog, the sound of a woman crying echoed, faint at first, then closer, as though the mist itself wept. Kenjiro fled toward the temple steps. But when he looked back, he saw the well shimmering faintly. And over its rim fluttered a white cloth, soaked through with something dark and red. He sank to the floor of the veranda, trembling. The voice still lingered in his ears. Greater than, return my heart, before the bell tolls again. That night, he dreamed. He saw the temple aflame, the molten bronze bubbling like blood. Men shouted, women prayed, and amid the fire stood a woman bound in white. She turned her face toward him, eyes full of smoke, and whispered. Greater than, you were there, watching me burn. He awoke drenched in cold sweat. Outside, the mist still clung to the earth. And beneath the veranda, a trail of wet footprints led from the direction of the well to where he sat. They stopped just before him. Then, through the silence, a voice murmured, low, near his ear. Greater than, you have seen me. Keep your promise. At dawn, the well was dry. Only a single white flower floated within it, wilted, colorless, and still dripping with dew that smelled faintly of iron. Kenjiro opened his notebook and wrote with a trembling hand. Greater than, third night, I saw her in the water. She doesn't seek revenge. She seeks remembrance, even if through blood. From far away, as he closed the book, the bell tolled once. A note deep and hollow. Like the sound of water falling forever. Chapter 7: The Secret Blood Ritual. That night, the wind from the mountains blew with the weight of something ancient. The scent of rust and burnt incense filled the air. Kenjiro sat cross-legged inside the ruined main hall. Before him the open journal of Abbot Dogen. The flame of the oil lamp trembled, casting a faint light upon the torn pages. Outside, the bell remained silent, yet in Kenjiro's chest, its echo still throbbed, steady as a heartbeat. He read the final entry again. Greater than, tonight, they will forge the bell with fire and blood. The flame flickered, then died. Dust fell from the beams above, and the world changed. The night around him dissolved, and in its place rose another, one that smelled of fire and molten bronze. He stood now within a vision, or perhaps within the memory of the temple itself. Shōren-ji was alive again, its courtyards blazing with torchlight. Villagers knelt in rows, their heads bowed to the earth. At the center stood the great bronze mold, glowing red like an open wound. 4 smiths hammered in rhythm, not with the sound of work, but of worship. Upon a high wooden dais sat Abbot Dogen, his robes dark, his face white and hollow. Beside him knelt a woman bound in white, Okane. Her eyes were calm, her lips curved in something that might have been peace. The drums ceased. The chief smith bowed and said, "Greater than, the metal has melted. The bell will not sing without a pure soul within it. Who will offer their heart?" Dogen said nothing. Okane spoke first, her voice light and steady. "Greater than, if a heart is needed, let it be mine. I have tainted this place with love. Let my blood cleanse it." Dogen trembled. Tears fell from his eyes. He pressed his forehead to the ground, chanting prayers that shook with despair. But he did not stop them. The smith raised his hand. 2 men approached, covering Okane's body with white cloth. The crowd began to chant sutras, low, rhythmic, like the beating of a single, vast heart. Then they pushed her into the fire. A scream tore through the night. Not of pain, but of something deeper, the tearing of soul from flesh. The flames surged higher, turning gold, then crimson. The air filled with the smell of burning silk and sanctified blood. Dogen collapsed, clutching his head. "Greater than, forgive me, he cried. But the chanting continued, and in the inferno, the outline of a woman writhed, hair ablaze. Yet even as her body turned to light, her lips still moved, whispering a prayer. Then the sky broke. Rain fell, heavy, warm, red. The fire hissed, and from the molten metal rose a single, perfect bell. The chief smith struck it gently with his hammer. Boong! A sound, pure and deep, rolled through the valley. Yet within that purity hid another sound, faint but unmistakable. The sob of a woman, echoing from within the metal. Dogen crawled toward the bell, blood dripping from his hands. "Greater than, from this night forth," he whispered. "Let this bell be my heart. May she find peace within its sound." But as his palm touched the bronze, the blood from his wounds soaked into it, and on its surface appeared a red handprint, delicate and feminine, like the mark of a spirit reaching out from the other side. The vision shattered. Kenjiro awoke on the temple floor, drenched in sweat, gasping for air. Before him, the altar stood blackened, and on the stone lay a piece of scorched white cloth, smelling of ash and iron. He understood then. He had witnessed the true forging of the bell, not through dream, but through memory awakened by blood. Outside, the wind howled. The bell tolled once, then twice, then thrice. Each note was followed by another, softer, sadder, like the echo of a sob. And within the last fading tone, Kenjiro heard her voice, faint but clear. "Greater than, the bell does not sing for those who strike it. It sings for those who died within it." By morning, smoke rose from Shōren-ji. No fire, no flames, only a gray mist that smelled faintly of tears and copper. In his notebook, Kenjiro wrote, "Greater than, I have seen the ritual. I know why the bell rings. She cannot rest, for love is a chain that even fire cannot break." Chapter 8: The Night of Blood and Bells. That night, the sky was black as ink. Not a single star. A storm brooded above the mountain, and the air itself trembled, heavy with the smell of rain and metal. Kenjiro sat alone in the main hall, the oil lamp flickering beside him. The silence pressed in from all sides. From the village below, not even the barking of dogs could be heard. It was as if the world were holding its breath. Then came the first toll. Soft, distant, impossibly deep, a sound that seemed to rise not from the bell, but from the earth itself. Kenjiro went outside. The courtyard was shrouded in fog, the cedars bending under the rising wind. Lightning flashed once, revealing the great bell standing in the center of the temple grounds. It was glowing faintly, as though something within it had begun to breathe. He stepped closer. The surface of the bell pulsed, expanding and contracting like the chest of a living creature. From deep inside came a sound, a slow, steady thump. Boom, boom, boom. The sound of a heartbeat. Kenjiro whispered. Greater than, Okane, are you there? No reply. Only the echo of his own voice, swallowed by the wind. Then, a sigh, soft and weary, drifting from within the bell. Greater than, I have never left. The bell is my body now. Lightning split the sky. For an instant, the entire courtyard glowed red. And Kenjiro saw the truth. The bell was bleeding. Dark streaks ran down its surface, thick and glistening, dripping onto the stones below. The blood hissed as it touched the earth. Kenjiro stumbled backward, horrified. The voice came again, clearer this time, closer, as though the metal itself were speaking through the rain. Greater than, every time they remember me, I awaken. Every time they forget, I sleep. The bell shuddered violently. Thunder roared. Then came the second toll, louder, deeper. The sound shook the ground, splitting the wooden pillars of the temple. From the cracks in the walls, blood began to flow, thin red lines snaking toward the courtyard. Kenjiro shouted into the storm. Greater than, what do you want from me? For a moment, the storm paused, and through the curtain of rain, he saw her. A woman in white, hair unbound, standing beside the bell. Her skin glowed faintly in the lightning, her eyes black and endless. Greater than, you came to remember, she said. Then remember everything. She lifted her hand, scorched, delicate, and touched the bell. The bronze melted under her fingers, dripping like wax. From within, something moved, a shape pressing against the metal from the inside. Greater than, every soul that hears me joins me, she whispered. Every heart that beats for me becomes mine. Kenjiro's chest tightened. He fell to his knees, clutching his heart. With each toll, he felt his pulse weaken, as though the bell were stealing it. The third toll came, long and terrible. The air vibrated, the rain turned red. The trees bent toward the ground. And in that red storm, the bell cracked open. From within it emerged the woman in white. Her body made of mist and fire. Her eyes pools of sorrow. She reached out to him. Greater than, Kenjiro, don't be afraid. You heard me, you remembered me. Now you will stay with me. Her hand touched his chest. At that instant, their heartbeats aligned. The sound of his pulse became the fourth toll. Deep, final, and utterly human. The storm ended. The bell stood silent once more. Kenjiro lay motionless at its base, eyes open, lips curved into the faintest smile. By dawn, the rain had stopped. Villagers who climbed the hill found the temple half collapsed. The great bell had split in two, and beside it lay a new bell. Smaller, red as blood, cold as the dead. On its surface, freshly etched as if by unseen hands, were the words, Greater than, I saw her in the fire, in the water, and in the bell. Now I am within her. Signed simply, Kenjiro. From that day on, whenever the fog rolled down the valley, the villagers heard four tolls. The first three heavy and mournful, the last, a faint echo, like the fading beat of a human heart. Chapter 9: The Returning Souls. 30 years passed after the night of blood and thunder. The village at the foot of Mount Shōren had changed, new roofs, new generations, new names. But the hill remained the same. Mist still gathered there each morning, and when the wind blew from the mountains, a distant bell could still be heard, tolling 4 times. No one dared climb the hill anymore. They said the bell belonged to neither gods nor men. but to two souls bound by love and sin. Those who dreamed during the rainy season often saw the same vision. A man and a woman walking together through the fog. Hand in hand, their faces pale and serene. Their eyes dark as the hollow of the bell itself. One autumn evening, a young monk named Ryuan arrived from Kyoto. He was a pilgrim of forgotten temples, one who believed that every abandoned place still whispered prayers. When he heard the villagers' stories, he bowed and said gently, "Greater than, if spirits still linger, then prayers must still be spoken." The villagers tried to stop him, but he climbed the hill anyway, carrying only his prayer beads and a small oil lamp. The path was overgrown with grass, the gravestones crooked and nameless. At the top, the ruins of Shōren-ji waited. No roof, no altar, only the bell, half buried in moss. The bell was unlike any other. It was smaller than legend had described. Its bronze surface red like dried blood. And when Ryuan touched it, it was warm, as though something beneath still breathed. He knelt before it and began to chant sutras, his voice rising and falling softly, like wind through old trees. As he reached the final line, "May all beings cross the sea of suffering," the prayer beads in his hands snapped. The pearls scattered across the ground, and in the silence that followed, the bell rung by itself. Two notes, one low and deep, one high and trembling, rising and falling together like a sigh. Mist swirled around him. On the bell's surface, shadows formed. A woman in white, a man in scholar's robes, standing side by side. Their faces were calm, their eyes closed, their fingers intertwined. Ryuan lowered his head. Tears filled his eyes. Then the woman's voice drifted from the mist. "Greater than, I waited too long. But now I am not alone." A man's voice followed, gentle, hollow. "Greater than, the dead do not fear the flame. Only the living fear being remembered forever." The mist spun once, then began to fade. The shadows thinned, melting into the metal. When Ryuan looked again, the bell was cold. And upon its surface, fresh words had appeared, carved so fine they seemed written by air. "Greater than, blood has stilled. The bell is quiet. The souls have returned home." The next morning, the villagers found the monk asleep beside the bell. His hands pressed in prayer, his face peaceful. The bell had cracked cleanly in two. Inside, they found only two small bones, lying together like clasped fingers. Since that day, Shōren Hill has remained silent. The bell never rang again. But those who walk near the old well on misty nights sometimes hear water dripping, slow, rhythmic, endless. And within that sound, if one listens long enough, two faint voices whisper together. "Greater than, the bell tolls, the heart sleeps." Chapter 10: The Bell That Would Not Sleep. Decades passed. The temple of Shōren-ji crumbled into earth and moss. Only its name remained, carried by the wind that passed through the valley. Where the bell had once hung, there was now only grass, and a hush so deep it seemed the mountain itself mourned. The villagers buried the two small bones found inside the cracked bell beneath a stone marker. They built a new shrine on the ruins, naming it Hōun-ji, Temple of Mercy and Grace. They believed that by giving the hill a new name, the ghosts would finally rest. But the past never sleeps so easily. On nights without a moon, when the mist crept down from the mountains like white smoke, a sound could still be heard. Not loud, not near, only a faint toll, as though from deep beneath the soil. It came 4 times, always 4. And when the wind carried it away, the air smelled faintly of rain and rust. Children grew up fearing that sound. Old people bowed when they heard it. They called it the heart bell, the breath of the two souls who once loved too much. 1. The digging of the earth. In the 23rd year of the Meiji era, a group of laborers were sent to repair the foundation of the new shrine. As they dug into the soil, their shovels struck something hard. When they unearthed it, they found a shard of red metal, still warm. They thought it treasure, But when one man struck it with his spade, a dull note rang out. Boong. And all of them heard it, not as a sound, but as a voice. A woman's voice, soft, close to laughter, followed by a sigh. The man who had struck the shard fell ill that night. He muttered in fever. Greater than, she's calling me from the fire. At dawn, he was dead. The others buried the metal again. No one spoke of it afterward. 2. The bell of the new shrine. The abbot of Shōren-ji, a kind old monk named Kankai, believed that every curse could be eased through compassion. He hung the recovered fragment of the old bell at the gate of the shrine, calling it the bell of human bonds. Greater than, if it rings by itself, he said, it means the souls within still remember one another. That night, he prayed for the departed. When he finished his chant, a breeze stirred. The bell fragment began to hum, not clang, but hum, a sound deep and pure. Those who were there swore they saw two faint red characters appear across its surface. Okane, Kenjiro. Kankai bowed deeply. Greater than, then they are together, he said. Every year after that, on the night of the 7th full moon, the bell rang on its own. The villagers gathered to light lanterns and release them into the air. They called it the night of the lover's bell. The night when the living prayed for the dead, and the dead whispered back to the living. 3. The recording. In the 7th year of the Showa period, a researcher from Tokyo came to record the mysterious sound. He brought with him a phonograph and cylinders of wax. He waited all night under the shrine gate. At midnight, the bell rang. He recorded it, but when he played it back, no bell could be heard. Only a slow, rhythmic heartbeat, and then two voices whispering. Greater than, the bell tolls. The heart sleeps. The bell sleeps. The heart tolls. Terrified, he burned the recording before dawn. No one tried again. 4. The memory of sound. Years passed. The legend of Shōren-ji became a story mothers told their children. A warning not to forget the dead too easily. On misty nights, travelers passing the hill claimed to hear, not metal striking metal, but two voices breathing together. The sound was neither song nor weeping. Something between them. 4 notes. 2 for the living. 2 for the dead. No one remembers what Kenjiro or Okane looked like anymore. Their faces are gone, their bodies dust. But the sound remains. Soft, deep, endless. The echo of a love too heavy to fade. Chapter 11 Confession in the Dark. It was winter when the wandering monk Shinjo came to Tottora. Snow covered the roads, the air sharp as glass. He was a humble man, known for reciting sutras at forgotten temples. The kind of places even ghosts had stopped visiting. When he reached the foot of Shōren Hill, the villagers begged him not to go further. Greater than, the bell there is cursed, they said, even the dead keep their distance. Shinjo smiled softly. Greater than, if souls remain unquiet, I will pray for them. A place that once held prayers should not be left in silence. He climbed the hill alone, lantern flickering in the storm. By dusk, he reached the ruins of Shōren-ji. Now nothing more than broken pillars and blackened stones buried beneath snow. In the center of the ruin stood a half-shattered Buddha statue. Its head missing, its body cracked but still upright. When Shinjo brushed away the snow, he noticed something lodged deep within the chest of the statue. A scroll, charred and brittle with age. He pulled it free, reverently, and saw faint red ink upon the paper. Though many words had faded, the signature at the bottom was still clear. Dogen, Abbot of Shōren-ji. Shinjo sat before the statue, lit a stick of incense, and began to read beneath the trembling light. The Abbot's Confession, Genroku Year 8. Greater than, I the unworthy monk Dogen, once believed that purity could cleanse all sin. But I was wrong. Purity is only for those who have never loved. Greater than, her name was Okane. I loved her voice when she recited the sutras. Her hands as they lit the lamps. Her eyes that looked not upon a man, but upon the world with mercy. In that love, I forgot the Buddha's path. Greater than, the villagers saw our sin before I did. When the bell cracked, they said the temple had been defiled by her presence. They demanded her blood. And I, coward that I was, stayed silent. Greater than, on the night of the forging, I heard her scream within the fire. And in that scream, she prayed, not for herself, but for me. Greater than, each time the bell rings, I hear her voice calling my name. Not in hatred, but in sorrow. She cannot rest, for my heart is still bound to hers. Greater than, if one day another should read this, tell her this. I loved her. I have always loved her. I am no monk, only a man who burned the woman he loved. Greater than, let my soul become the bell, so that each toll is my confession, and each echo her forgiveness. The ink had faded almost completely. Shinjo folded the letter and wept silently. Outside, the wind howled over the snow. But beneath it, faint and distant, came the toll of a bell. Low, slow, and human. He pressed his palms together, eyes closed, and began to chant. As he recited, a thin gray mist rose from the statue, coiling upward, then dispersing like breath in the cold air. Two voices whispered through the wind, fading as they spoke. Greater than, you have read my sin. Now I may rest. When the mist vanished, the temple grew still. Shinjo bowed 3 times to the broken Buddha and whispered, greater than, there are sins that need no forgiveness, only understanding. At dawn, the snow fell again. The hill glimmered white and silent. And beneath that silence, somewhere deep under the ground, a bell murmured once, soft as a sigh, as though it, too, had wept. Chapter 12. The Face in the Bell. The year was 1924. Japan was changing, temples replaced by train stations, prayers by factories, silence by the hum of modern life. But on the outskirts of Nagano, there remained one hill no one wished to touch, Shōren Hill, where the fog clung year-round and birds never sang. It was there that Ichiro Hayami, a painter known for his fascination with forgotten places, arrived. He had heard the story from a professor at Tokyo Imperial University. A legend of a bell forged from human blood, and of the woman whose soul sang within it. An ideal subject, he had said, smiling faintly. Tragedy immortalized by sound. 1. The painting begins. Ichiro set up his easel at the edge of the ruined shrine. The air was heavy, the grass slick with dew that smelled faintly of metal. The bell, or what remained of it, still stood among the weeds, cracked and half sunk in soil. Its color was strange, not bronze, not rust, but a deep, pulsing red, as if some ember still glowed beneath its surface. He began to paint. Each brushstroke captured not the bell itself, but the feeling it gave, a sense that something watched from within. When the sun began to set, Ichiro stepped back and frowned. There, in the half-finished canvas, he saw the faint outline of a woman's face reflected upon the bell. He hadn't painted it, yet it was there, pale, sorrowful, half-formed in shadow. He laughed uneasily, blaming his fatigue. But when he turned to leave, the sound of metal followed him. A single low toll, deep and shivering, though the air was still. 2. The whisper. That night, at his inn, Ichiro could not sleep. He kept seeing the woman's face in his mind, and hearing the echo of that toll in his chest, as if it had replaced his heartbeat. At midnight, he awoke to the sound of dripping. Not rain, but something heavier, slower. He turned on his lamp. On the floor beside his bed lay his sketchbook, open. On the last page was a drawing he didn't remember making. A woman in white, standing before the bell, her hand pressed against its surface. Beneath it were words scrawled in his own handwriting, though he had no memory of writing them. Greater than, she looked at me from inside the bronze. The dripping continued. He followed the sound to the corner of the room. There, hanging from the ceiling, was a small iron bell he had bought as a souvenir. It was bleeding. Thin streams of red ran down its side, pooling on the tatami. Ichiro stumbled backward, heart racing. The bell swayed once, twice, and then a whisper filled the room. Greater than, you painted me beautifully. Free, the possession. The next day, he returned to the hill, desperate to finish the painting. Rain fell lightly, veiling the world in silver. He painted faster, feverishly, as though guided by another hand. The woman's face upon the bell became clearer, too clear. Her eyes were open now, looking straight at him. He tried to stop. He couldn't. His hand moved on its own, painting her hair, her lips, the faint curve of a smile. And as the final stroke touched the canvas, the bell before him rung. Not once, but 4 times. Lightning tore the sky. The sound reverberated through his bones. And he fell to his knees, screaming. When the storm passed, the villagers climbed the hill. They found the easel overturned, the ground scorched black. Of Ichiro, there was no sign. Only his painting, standing upright, dry despite the rain. In it, the bell gleamed as if newly forged. And on its polished surface, 2 figures were visible, a man and a woman. Their hands touching across the bronze. Beneath the painting, in faint red ink, was written, Greater than, the painter has entered the bell. 4. The gallery. Years later, the painting was displayed in a Tokyo gallery under the title The Woman in the Bell. Visitors often said the eyes of the woman seemed to follow them. Some claimed to hear faint ringing when they looked too long. One critic wrote, Greater than, the painting feels alive, as though the sound of its creation still lingers within the pigment. But one night, a guard making his rounds noticed something strange. The canvas was wet, as if freshly painted. He leaned closer, and saw a third reflection forming in the bell, his own face. Distorted, vanishing into red. By morning, he was gone. The gallery closed that room forever. And still, every few years, someone claims to see the painting again, in auctions, in dreams, in private collections. Always the same bell. Always the same woman. Always the faint echo of a 4th toll. Boong, 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 boong. The sound of a heart remembering itself. Chapter 13 The Last Guardian of Shōren-ji. In the spring of 1951, Japan was still rebuilding. Cities rose from ashes, shrines rebuilt their gates. But the hill where Shōren-ji once stood remained untouched. A scar on the landscape, left to the fog and the crows. Only one man still climbed it, Mikami, the old caretaker of Hōun-ji. He had served the temple for 40 years, sweeping the steps, mending the roof, and tending the graves no one visited anymore. People in the village called him the last guardian. He called himself the listener. Greater than, someone must hear the bell, he often said, or it will forget it ever rang. 1. The Keeper and the Silence. Each dawn, Mikami climbed the hill with his straw broom and small lantern. He spoke to the bell fragment still hanging at the ruined gate. Though cracked and dulled with rust, it still glimmered faintly when touched by light. Good morning, he would whisper. Sleep well? Sometimes, when he bowed, he thought he heard an answer, a faint hum, like a breath between heartbeats. During the summer of that year, strange things began to happen. The mist never left the hill, even under full sunlight. Lanterns refused to stay lit. And each night, Mikami dreamed of a woman standing inside a great bronze bell, whispering to him through the metal. Greater than, do you still remember me? He always woke before dawn, trembling, his hands cold as iron. 2. The Unearthed Relic. One afternoon, while clearing the weeds behind the main hall, Mikami's broom struck something hard. Digging through the soil, he uncovered a small bronze bell, half buried and engraved with characters too worn to read. It was shaped like the heart of a larger one, the core that once gave it resonance. When he lifted it, a chill ran up his arm. Inside, something rattled softly, like stones or bones. He set it before the altar and prayed. That night, he dreamed again. This time, the woman was not alone. Beside her stood a man in scholar's robes. His face pale, his eyes kind. "Greater than, you've carried our voices long enough," the man said. "Let us rest." "Greater than, but the bell still rings," Mikami whispered. "Greater than, because you still listen." He awoke before dawn to the toll of the bell, 4 times. Clear and heavy, echoing through the mist. But when he ran outside, the fragment at the gate was still. The sound had come from beneath the earth. Free. The descent. Guided by instinct or fate, Mikami returned to the spot where he had found the small bell. He dug through the wet soil until his hands bled. Beneath the roots, he uncovered a stone stairway leading downward, sealed by a wooden door blackened with age. He forced it open. A gust of air rushed out, cold, dry, and filled with the smell of burnt incense and copper. He descended. Below the hill lay a cavern, the old foundry where the first bell had been forged. In the center stood a massive mold, cracked and fused to the earth. And before it, a pool of still water reflecting the ceiling like a mirror. When he stepped closer, he saw faces in the water, dozens of them, faint, sorrowful. Some familiar, others lost to time. Among them were 2 that seemed almost alive. A woman's gentle eyes, and a man's weary smile. They spoke as one. Greater than, the bell was never a curse. It was a memory. But memory without end becomes pain. The pool began to tremble. From its surface rose faint ripples of light. And within them, he saw the image of a bell, whole again, glowing red. Singing not with metal, but with voices. Mikami wept. He fell to his knees, pressing his hands together in prayer. "Greater than, then I shall be your final listener," he whispered. "After me, silence." The light faded. The cavern grew dark. Only the small bronze bell in his pocket remained warm. Its faint heartbeat slowing, until it stopped. 4. The hill without echo. When villagers came to look for Mikami, they found the hill empty. His broom lay beside the altar, his sandals neatly placed by the gate. The bell fragment had vanished. From that day onward, the sound stopped. No tolls, no whispers. Even the wind passed quietly, as though afraid to disturb something at peace. They built a stone tablet on the summit with his name, and carved beneath it a short inscription. Greater than, he listened until the end. At night, the mist still rises, but it no longer glows. And though the valley remains silent, those who linger too long at dusk swear they hear one last breath of sound. Not the toll of a bell, but the soft voice of a man whispering to the wind. Greater than, sleep well. Okane. Chapter 14. The Bell Recast. Years passed, and the hill of Shōren faded from maps. The forests grew thick again, swallowing the old stones, until only a few villagers remembered where the temple had stood. Then came the summer of 1972. Lightning struck the abandoned warehouse of the Tokyo National Museum. A sudden storm, fierce and brief. When the fire was extinguished, the curators discovered, amid the ashes, a lump of red metal glowing faintly at the center of the ruin. It was smooth, round, and warm to the touch. Tests showed no known alloy. Its core pulsed once every few seconds, as if echoing a heartbeat that refused to die. No one could explain it. The museum staff sent it to Nagano Prefecture for study. And there, by coincidence, or fate, the object came into the hands of the local priests at the rebuilt Shōren-ji temple. They placed it on the altar. That night, the wind began to hum. The next morning, the old priest declared, "Greater than, the bell has returned home." 1. The craftsman. The temple sought a master metalworker to restore what they believed was a fragment of an ancient artifact. They found Takamura Hiroshi, a craftsman from Osaka known for his skill with sacred instruments. When Takamura first touched the metal, it burned his palm. He dropped it, startled, but when he looked, his skin bore the shape of a handprint, as though someone else had already been holding his hand. He laughed nervously. "Greater than, strange heat retention," he muttered. "Feels alive." That night, he dreamed of a woman in white, standing beside a half-melted bell. She smiled gently and said, "Greater than, if you give me form again, I will sing once more." When he awoke, his workshop smelled faintly of incense and iron. On his workbench, the metal had shifted shape, slightly larger, slightly rounder, as if it had grown while he slept. 2. The forging. Weeks passed. Takamura poured his devotion into the work, hammering, molding, polishing, until a small bell took shape, graceful, red, flawless. He decided to cast a full-sized one for the temple's grand ceremony. On the night of completion, villagers gathered around the furnace. Rain began to fall, but it was warm, not cold, like breath upon skin. The moment the molten metal was poured, a strange wind rose, carrying the scent of sakura mixed with blood. The flames turned crimson, and within them, Takamura saw two figures. A woman's face serene and luminous, and beside her, a man with ink-stained hands, smiling sadly. The crowd gasped as the fire roared higher than the roof. Then came a voice, not from the people, not from the priest, but from within the metal itself. Greater than, blood sleeps, blood awakens. The bell rang once, though no hammer struck it. Takamura collapsed, his chest heaving. Blood trickled from his ears and mouth, yet he smiled faintly. Greater than, it's singing, he whispered. When the storm passed, the air smelled of rain and copper. In the cooling pit lay a perfect bell, its surface gleaming with the color of fresh dawn. But upon its flank, a new mark had appeared. A red handprint, delicate and unmistakably human. 3. The ceremony. At sunrise, the bell was raised to hang in the courtyard of Shōren-ji. The villagers gathered in awe. The abbot, old and trembling, struck the first toll. Boong. The sound rolled down the valley. Deep, clear, beautiful, and unbearably sad. The second toll followed. The wind stopped. The third toll, the earth itself seemed to shiver. Then, before the abbot could strike again, the bell rang on its own. It tolled a fourth time. Low, human, filled with longing. The crowd fell silent. Takamura dropped to his knees. He could hear whispers within the vibration. Two voices, soft and intertwined. Greater than, Kenjiro. Okane. Tears filled the old monk's eyes. Greater than, they have come home, he whispered. From that night on, the bell rang by itself whenever rain fell on the temple roof. And each time it did, the villagers swore they heard three voices within the sound. Two old, one new. As though a third heart had joined theirs. They called it the Bell of Three Souls. No one dared strike it again. It sang only when it wished. And when it did, the mist covered the mountain. And all living things fell silent to listen. Chapter 15. The Last Toll. 100 years had passed since the night the bell was reborn. The world had changed, the mountains quieter, the forests thinner, and the people who once feared the name Shōren-ji had long turned it into myth. But myths do not die. They wait. 1. The Festival of Lanterns. On the night of the Festival of Spirits, the villagers of Nagano gathered once again at Shōren-ji. Children released lanterns into the river, their lights drifting downstream like stars carried by water. The temple bell, the Bell of Three Souls, had not rung for many years. It hung silent, tarnished by time. Its red glow faded to bronze. Yet that night, under a sky heavy with mist, the wind changed. It came from the north. Soft, wet, and warm. The kind of wind that carried memories. An old monk, blind and frail, stood before the bell with his students. He was the last abbot of Shōren-ji. And though his sight was gone, he said quietly, "Greater than, tonight, we pray for those who could not rest." The monks began to chant. Their voices rose and fell like waves. Then, without warning, the bell answered. 2. The Awakening. The first toll rolled through the valley. Low, trembling, alive. The second toll came softer, deeper. And as it faded, the mist began to glow faintly red. The villagers fell silent. The air thickened. And in the shimmering light beside the bell, two shapes appeared. A man and a woman. They stood hand in hand. Their faces calm, their eyes closed. The woman's white robes moved as though underwater. The man's ink-stained fingers still clutched a notebook. The old abbot fell to his knees, tears on his face. "Greater than, so it is true," he whispered. "The souls of the bell still linger." The woman opened her eyes. They were no longer hollow, only tired, peaceful. "Greater than, we waited until someone remembered," she said. "Now, we may forget." The man turned to her, smiling faintly. "Greater than, shall we ring it together?" She nodded. They stepped toward the bell. And when their hands touched the cold bronze, the surface began to shimmer, turning from metal to light. The third toll came. Soft, beautiful, unearthly. And in that sound, the villagers heard not sorrow, but release. Free. The last toll. The abbot whispered. "Greater than, let this be the final sound." The two spirits turned toward the crowd. For a moment, the woman's gaze met the abbot's blind eyes. He smiled, as if he could see her. She bowed. Then together, they raised their hands one last time. And the bell tolled a fourth and final time. It was unlike any sound the mountain had ever known. Neither metal nor wind nor rain, but a heartbeat that spread through the earth, carrying with it a warmth so deep that even the mist began to weep. When the echo faded, the figures were gone. The bell had vanished too, leaving only a circle of ash on the stone platform. At its center lay a single white flower, its petals faintly pink, as though kissed by blood. 4. The Hill of Silence. Morning came. The mist lifted for the first time in centuries. Birds returned to the forest. The temple bell was gone. But in its absence, the mountain finally breathed again. Where it once hung, the villagers built a small stone marker. It bore no names, only an inscription carved by the last abbot's hand. Greater than, the bell sleeps within the heart. The heart sleeps within the bell. Each spring, white flowers bloom around that stone, their petals trembling gently in the wind. And when the wind passes through them, it makes a faint sound, like the sigh of a woman's breath or the echo of a distant bell. No one has heard the bell of Shōren-ji since that day. But those who walk the mountain at dusk say the silence there is not empty. It listens. And sometimes, just before the rain, a voice whispers softly through the air. Greater than, the bell has stopped. But the love remains. Centuries have passed. The temple is gone. The hill is quiet. Yet when the rain falls over Nagano, some swear they still hear a faint toll carried through the fog. 4 notes, slow and human, followed by a sigh that feels almost like peace. Perhaps it is only the wind. Perhaps it is the sound of 2 souls finally at rest. Or perhaps the bell still remembers what it was made for. Not to summon the living, but to keep the dead from being forgotten. And if you listen closely, very closely, you may still hear her voice. Soft and eternal. Greater than, the bell sleeps, but the heart remembers.
Like and subscribe to Whispering Dark Tales for more chilling ghost stories.